a caregiver, that you're helping a family member, a friend, a neighbor with daily tasks? Anyone up there? That's okay. We've got a couple down here. So essentially, let me just advance the slide here. Caregivers. No? No. Good. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Essentially, caregivers are people who assist another person with daily activities like grocery shopping, cleaning their house, working in the yard, and other chores like that. For many, this is how it starts, with these small tasks that you're helping someone with. And then over time, that person's care needs start to increase. So then the tasks that you're doing start to become more involved. You might be helping someone manage their medications or get to and from the doctor. You might be helping them pay their bills, and sometimes they might even need assistance with bigger things, preparing meals, showering, and other more personal care tasks. Looking at the statistics, it's interesting. It says more than 65 million people are caregivers. Essentially, 3 out of 10 people, I've even seen that as high as up to 40% of the population, is caring for someone who's chronically ill, disabled, or aging. Okay? And those people spend on average 20 hours a week of their time providing that care to another person. It's a pretty significant amount of time. When you think about 20 hours, it could be a part-time job, or even more. Some people can spend up to 40 or more hours providing care. But the average is 20. And then most of those people who are receiving the care that you are providing are living at home or with the person that's caring for them. So that means those caregivers have that person they're caring for at home. They're doing that direct care. They are making those meals. They're helping them with everything they need help with because they're at home. They're not in a care facility where there's staff to provide that care for them. So I think those numbers are kind of interesting. We're not going to dwell on them very much, but it's important to know, and if you are working as a caregiver for someone, you already know that caregiving can be really difficult work. There are a lot of difficult and complex feelings that come into play when you are caring for another person. And then add in the fact that a lot of you could be raising children. You're obviously working part-time or full-time. You could be married. You could have other outside involvement. And then you've got this caregiving responsibility too, and it just becomes so much to balance over a period of time. So caregivers can become incredibly overwhelmed very quickly, especially if they don't have other people to help them with their caregiving tasks, if they don't have family members that are stepping up, or maybe they don't have siblings or friends to help them. And what we see a lot of times with those people who are caregivers, what they do is they kind of take everything in their life and they start to put it on the back burner. They might start withdrawing from social activities and stop spending time with friends. They might start to go to fewer sporting events for their kids because that person they're caring for needs their time, okay? It's possible to take your life and put it on the back burner for a short period of time, but if you're caring for someone who has a chronic condition like dementia or Parkinson's disease, those are long-term conditions where just putting your life on the back burner isn't going to work. If you do that, you'll become physically, mentally, emotionally overwhelmed. So that's kind of why we talk about caregiving, and we let caregivers know that it's okay to take care of yourself while you're caring for another person. It's difficult, but it's possible, and it's really important that you do that. The whole premise is that when you take good care of yourself, you are better able to provide excellent care to that person you're caring for. When you get stressed and overwhelmed and burned out, that really affects that quality of care that you're giving. Okay, so our whole role with our caregiver support program at the Aging and Disability Resource Center is really to help caregivers thrive while they're caregiving and not become that overwhelmed, stressed out, almost a second victim to whatever that chronic condition is of the person that you're caring for. So we just want to think about some things that cause stress. If you're a caregiver, if you're caring for someone, if you're a parent, you can think about your role in caring for your kids. But what are some things that might cause stress for you? Does anyone want to share money? Money is a huge one, yes. Yes.
Scheduling is a big one.
Scheduling, yes. Yep. Other thoughts? Anyone in Marsh, feel free to jump in if you've got thoughts about what might cause stress for you. No? Time. Time is a huge, and it kind of comes with scheduling and trying to fit everything in. And the scheduling is kind of related to money because you might have a work, a job that you need to go to, which affects your schedule and everything you can do in your free time. Other things that can cause stress, especially for people who are caregivers, is they just don't have any time for themselves. They might just really need to go get a haircut, but they don't have time to go do that. And that's stressful. They don't have time to go to the doctor. They might be worried they're not doing everything right. They've got so many responsibilities. How do they juggle this all? Or how do I know that the care that I'm providing to my loved one is actually the right thing to be doing? I could be doing something wrong or making something worse. So there are a lot of different things that cause stress for us in our lives. We're all just so busy, okay? What's important related to stress is that we recognize when we are getting stressed and we take action to reduce our stress, okay? If we don't address our stress early on, it kind of snowballs. It becomes bigger and bigger and bigger until we're at the end of our rope. And we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But I wanted to share some strategies for stress, and these are really useful for caregivers, but these are useful tips in any aspect of your life. So if you're not caregiving right now, or maybe you will be in the future, you can use these at any aspect or any stage of your life. But steps to managing stress, the first one is to recognize warning signs of stress early, okay? And sometimes that can be a really challenging step for people, but it's easier to make changes to reduce stress if we catch it early on, before it snowballs into something really big and really unmanageable. If we wait until we're overwhelmed or too overwhelmed, it can take longer for us to recover from the effects of that stress, okay? The second step for managing stress is to identify your sources of stress. So you kind of need to step back and look at your life and ask what's causing the stress that you're experiencing. It might be knowing that while you're here at work, the person you're caring for is home alone, and that might make you a little anxious or uncomfortable. You might wonder if that person you're caring for is actually eating their lunch when they're supposed to be eating their lunch, or maybe they're not eating at all. You could be worried about that. And maybe you just don't have enough time to do all of the different things that you need to do in a day. That's a huge source of stress. And then it's important to identify what you can and cannot change about your situation. So this involves asking ourselves, what in this situation do I have some form of control over? What can I change? What can't I change? Small changes can make a huge difference. It might not seem like it when you're thinking about it, but once you start implementing a small change, you generally notice an improvement. It's important to know that if there's something that you can't change, you identify that, because if you are spending time worrying about something you can't change and letting it cause more stress for you, that's a terrible situation for you. You'll get more worked up, more overwhelmed, more anxious about something you have no control over. So an example might be if you're caring for your adult parent and all of your siblings live out of state, so really they're no help to you for the hands-on activity that happens on a daily basis, you can't change the fact that all those siblings live out of state, right? But what you can do is let your stress about them living far away go. Don't worry about that, but then start to look for solutions. What can they do? Can someone call mom on a daily basis to check in with her while you're at work so you don't have to worry about that? Can they pay the bills? Can they do online bill pay? Are there some other things that they can help with? Can they coordinate Meals on Wheels and oversee that from wherever they are? So it's important to kind of look at that situation, work on the things you can change, and let go of the things you can't. And then that fourth step to managing stress is taking action. It's important that you do something to improve your stress. Once you've identified what those signs are, identified what you can and can't change, then take some kind of action, put some kind of plan in place to help reduce the stress that you're experiencing. Okay? And again, the earlier that you're able to step back and observe your stress and notice what those symptoms are, those signs you're experiencing, the earlier you act on them, the better that will be for you. So stress from caregiving can often lead to some other difficult feelings. And this could, again, if we don't have a lot of people who are providing that direct care for a family member, you can think of your family, your kids, or your extended family. But stress from caregiving, stress from life, can lead to other feelings like anger and guilt. Feelings of anger can result from many different aspects of caregiving. Their anger is tied heavily to the different stressors you're experiencing. Those things that cause you stress, as that stress builds up, it can lead to anger. It's important to know that anger, it's not good or bad, it's not right or wrong. I think it's one of those feelings we grow up hearing isn't good. It's not good when you're angry, so it doesn't feel good to be angry. But it's not good, it's not bad, it's not right, it's wrong. It's the experience that you're having at that moment. And it's important to note that other feelings are usually a part of anger. Sometimes we talk about the anger volcano. Your anger gets all pent up inside, and then when you explode, it's kind of like a volcano. There's also an anger iceberg. I found this nice picture. This is more the iceberg concept here, but that what everybody sees on top, this is what's above the water. That our angry reaction could be yelling or screaming. It could be clenching our fists. It could be throwing something, punching things, having a really angry outburst. That's what all of you see when I get angry, okay? But what's below that anger are a whole variety of other feelings. It could be frustration, hurt, embarrassment, fear, sadness, confusion, rejection. So many other feelings that are going on that's leading to this anger up here. So that's important to know whenever you're angry, not just when you're a caregiver and you're angry, in any part of life. There's a lot of emotions that come behind anger that we generally don't notice because we're angry, and that's what we see. We don't see everything else down here. So it's important that we deal with our anger in healthy and constructive ways. Sometimes these physical responses, the yelling, the throwing something, that kind of releases that angry tension we feel at that moment. In the end, afterwards, we have some thoughts that probably wasn't the best way to handle it. So it's important that we think of some other ways to deal with anger that's more constructive. Maybe it's taking a short walk around the block. Maybe it's stopping and just doing some deep breathing. Or maybe it's reading a book or taking a break. I had one lady in class who said she just loved when she's angry to go in the shower, turn on a shower, really hot, and cry. So it's really individual, whatever works for you to help you process that anger in a more constructive way. Usually after we're angry, then we've thought about it, we've cooled down, and we start to feel guilty. Okay, I don't know if anyone's ever experienced that. Feelings of guilt are very common among people who are family caregivers. They really wonder or worry that everything they're doing is right. Okay, so they doubt themselves, they second guess themselves. They wonder if it was right that they should have put mom in an assisted living facility, or is it okay to be leaving her at home alone during the day while I'm at work? What if I hadn't, left the home the day that, my dad had a stroke or something like that? So there's always that continual dialogue running through their head, wondering if they could have done something differently or better, which leaves them feeling guilty. It's really easy to assume in every aspect of our life that if we had done something different, things would be better, right? But that's not always the case, okay? And it's just important to know that. Often it can be really helpful to ask, did I really do something wrong in this situation? Was it wrong to put mom in an assisted living facility? Is it wrong to leave her while I go to work? Or do you just wish you had done something differently or could do something differently? The thing when it comes to guilt, in all of my years working with caregivers, I've never seen a caregiver not trying their best. Every caregiver I've ever worked with is doing the absolute best that they can at that moment with the information they have available, with the resources they have available. And so sometimes when it comes to guilt, it's really important to just change our self-talk that we have running through our head, rather than saying, I could have done this differently, I should have done this differently, those negative thoughts that lead to those feelings of guilt. Sometimes it's just helpful to stop yourself and say, you know what, I'm doing the best that I can. And I think that applies to everybody, not only caregivers, it applies to us as parents, it applies to us as children, it applies to us as siblings. Everybody usually is generally always just doing the best that they can in life. So those feelings of guilt, sometimes we need to put those in check and not let them take over. Other common experiences for caregivers include feelings of burnout. I'm not sure if anybody has ever been burnt out. It could be related to work. It could be related to parenting. I know I'm kind of in that boat right now as a parent. But burnout is that complete physical, mental, and emotional exhaustion that just comes along with whatever it is you're doing. Caregiving, working, whatever. Okay? Has anybody ever been completely burnt out? How does that feel?
You're just done.
You're done.
You're done.
Yeah, you can't, you're kind of stuck. You can't move forward, you can't do anything, you're just there. And it's hard to know what to do next. Yep. Depression is also another common experience for people who are caregivers, and this one is really important, but I don't really want to spend too much time on it. But I just want to run through these signs of depression really quickly because it's important. If caregivers are depressed, if anyone's depressed, sometimes people are able to pull themselves out of that experience on their own independently, but sometimes they're not. And if it continues to grow, if it continues to fester, it can lead to some pretty serious ramifications for that person. So depression, if you think of it kind of like a continuum, there's one end where you're just kind of feeling down in the dumps, maybe a little sad or blue, and then the other end of that spectrum is feeling completely hopeless, like you can't go on anymore. When you're starting to experience some of these feelings, that you're feeling down or you're feeling sad, you want to try to catch those as soon as you can and address them. Take some kind of action to turn that around before it starts to get towards that feeling of hopelessness. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But some signs of depression are loss in pleasure of activities that you used to want to enjoy. Maybe you enjoyed going to your kids' soccer games, or maybe you enjoyed going to see friends, or coming to work, and you don't enjoy those things anymore. Just kind of an overwhelming, pervasive sadness. It just kind of feels heavy and you're sad all the time. Sleep difficulties, which could include sleeping too much or not sleeping very often, or not getting enough sleep. Just complete loss of energy. You just don't have energy to go through your daily activities. Abnormal restlessness, feeling nervous or anxious and you can't control that. Decreased concentration and difficulty making decisions. Low self-esteem, and then that pervasive feeling of hopelessness that just kind of you feel in every aspect of your life. So generally we advise that if you or someone you know is experiencing a cluster of these symptoms, you won't get diagnosed with dementia just based on one of these signs of dementia. You won't be diagnosed with depression with one of these. It's a cluster. They'll look for a few of these, that you're experiencing a few of these over a 2-week period. Then that's when it's important to go talk with your doctor. You can talk with a doctor, you can talk with a counselor. They can help you through this process of assessing any depression that you might be experiencing and working with that. The good news is that depression is really, it's treatable with high success. So it could involve talking with a counselor, it could involve some prescription medication, and generally some self-care, taking better care of ourselves, making time for ourselves is also a huge component of improving those symptoms or those feelings of depression. Okay? Excellent. So those are some heavy feelings that we talked about: anger and guilt, burnout, depression. But it's important to know that feelings are a normal response to any situation that you're in. Whether you're caregiving or whether you're just living your daily life, feelings are not good, they're not bad. It's just important that we listen to those emotions as we're experiencing them and the message that we're trying to send to ourselves, and we deal with them in a constructive way. Feelings are changeable. So if you've gotten very little sleep, if you are under a huge deadline at work, or maybe you have a sick child at home, you're going to approach everything in your life differently than if you had rested well, if you weren't under that big deadline, if your kids were all healthy at home. So all of those factors, something that, when you've got that big deadline looming, something could just really make you angry a lot faster than it would if you weren't under that deadline. So feelings can change. They're also an outgrowth of our perspective. How we view a situation affects how we respond. So sometimes if we're caring for someone, let's say they have Alzheimer's disease, I'm not sure how much you all know about that, but sometimes they can have some difficult behaviors, a lot of routine, repetitive questioning, and difficulty understanding what they should be doing or following a routine. It's easy for someone who doesn't understand the disease to think that that person is just purposely being difficult and not cooperating with them. But once they have a better understanding of what Alzheimer's disease is and how it's affecting their loved one's brain, then they might still be frustrated with the repetitive questioning and some of those difficult behaviors, but they're generally able to approach that situation with more compassion. Okay? And then our emotions are also a tool for self-understanding. So it's important that we're aware of our feelings, we are examining them, and we look at how they can help us better approach different things in our lives. It's not always easy though, again, because we've been taught growing up that certain emotions aren't okay. And so we kind of need to work past that to be okay feeling angry and trying to figure out what message we need to learn from that experience. So that's the heavy part, okay? Something we're going to talk about now is called an action plan. And I apologize for the people up in Marshfield because last night I was feeling just like I had forgotten something related to this presentation and I couldn't figure out what it was. And it was this action plan piece. So I don't have copies for you up there, but I will get them to Adam, and I know he said he'd send them out to you. But essentially, an action plan is just creating a small goal for yourself, something that you want to do in a week to help you take care of yourself. And action plans are great because they're really useful if you're caring for another person. They're really useful if you're not caring for another person. So everybody who's here today can implement an action plan. An action plan, it's a small goal. It's something that you want to do, not something someone told you should do, not something you need to do because it's on your to-do list and you need to mark it off for the week. It's something you want to do, something easy and attainable because you want to succeed at setting a goal, right? It should be behavior specific, and it's going to answer these questions here. What will you do? How much are you going to do? When will you do it? How often? I'll show you what the form looks like. If you're sitting here in the room, you've got the green action plan sheet with you. For the people who aren't here, I'm going to put it on the screen in a second. I'm not sure how well you'll be able to see it, but again, this is what Adam's going to send you. And the reason action plans are important, I love this little graphic up here. You can't pour from an empty cup. It's important that you take the time to take care of yourself. And that's exactly what this action plan does. It helps you take care of yourself. So here's what it looks like for you guys up in Marshfield. I don't know how well you can see that, but this is what Adam's going to be mailing to you or emailing to you. Again, these are a wonderful tool to just take a few minutes and reflect on each week. Sometimes we do this in our caregiving class that we offer to help caregivers take that time each week to reshift their perspective from the person they're caring for and everything that they have going on in their daily life. Take 5 minutes to think of what I'm going to do for myself this week. It could be that I'm going to make a call and schedule a doctor's appointment. I haven't had a physical in 5 years. I need to get to the doctor. It could be sitting down and reading a book. It could be calling a friend to go to lunch. Simple, small things that you can do to help you take care of yourself. Okay? In the last caregiving class we had one lady who really loved to set her action plan each week around riding her motorcycle. And she called it wind therapy. And so she would set her action plan to go ride her bike for 30 minutes each week. And that was such a huge source of happiness for her because it took her out of her caregiving situation and she was able to do something she loved, which she for years had put on the back burner and hadn't even thought about doing it because she couldn't leave her mom. Okay? So it's a simple thing that you can do to reshift that focus from everything going on in your life and everybody who needs your time to how you can just take a few minutes of time for yourself. A lot of people like to, once they have this all written out, is post it on their refrigerator or on a mirror or on a desk somewhere where they see it each week so they have a little accountability to that. And then once they finish this goal, they'll write a new goal for the next week. And some people just love doing this action plan activity every week just to make sure that they get a little bit of time for themselves no matter how small it is. So this is a great resource. And then local resources are also a huge help when you're caring for another person. There are so many different resources out there, and what we often find is that people who are caregivers get so focused on that caregiving experience, and they're so working towards providing that good care for their family member or their neighbor, that they don't really realize there are opportunities out there in the community for support and assistance. So this is a great reminder, a great knowledge for you to have. If it's not relevant now, you can know down the road that if you are ever in a situation, there are resources that can help There are support groups specific to caregivers throughout the county. And then there are a lot of disease-specific support groups too. So if you're caring for someone with Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's disease or cancer or diabetes, there are a lot of support groups out there. Caregiver classes and workshops, there are a variety of those offered throughout the county as well. So if you're looking for information on how to care for someone with Alzheimer's disease, again, any of these chronic conditions, there are options that are out there. Respite care is a huge opportunity for people who are caregivers, just that temporary break from their caregiving responsibilities. That could include, again, like let's say you go out to ride your motorcycle and you want to leave mom at home, but she can't stay home alone. Arranging for someone to come in and spend time with mom so you can have that break and know that she's supervised and receiving care while you're not there. That can happen in your home, that could happen in someone else's home. There are also adult day centers throughout the county, so places where you can drop a loved one off for that supervision while you're gone. There are usually social and recreational activities that are planned and happening there. It's a social setting. Many other adults who are unable to be left alone receive that supervision. There are meals and snacks. And so adult day centers are a great option too. A lot of caregivers I work with use the adult day center. They'll drop their family member off in the morning, they'll go to work, and then at the end of work pick their loved one up on the way home. So that's an option. There are agencies that provide supportive home care services, so help with cooking, cleaning, laundry, yard work, all the things that can be difficult to do when you've got all these other things happening in your life. And personal care assistance. So if you're caring for, let's say, this is often where it comes in, if you are an adult child caring for your parent and they need help showering, sometimes that's really hard for you as a child to bathe your dad. And sometimes it's awkward for your dad to be bathed by his child. And so there are agencies out there who can help you with that. They would come into the home and they can help provide that shower with someone who is trained on how to do that properly and by someone who doesn't have the years of history and relationship that you have. There are a variety of long-term care programs available throughout the state if your loved one needs more care but they don't have the financial resources to pay for them. There are wandering programs, and if you're worried that your loved one might unintentionally wander off and become lost. And there's so many more. So it's just important to know there's so many resources out there. And if you're not sure where to go for help or where to start finding this information, at the Aging and Disability Resource Center, we have a booklet called our Resource Directory. I have some here. If anyone in Marshfield wants them, let me know. We can get some up there. But it lists all of the different resources that are available for all of these different tasks and services. This information is also, our resource directory is also available on our website in an electronic form. So you can just go in and type that you're searching for support groups and you'll get all the support groups in your area. So if you're computer savvy, that might be an easier option for you than flipping through the book. But this would also be appropriate too. If you're not sure where to go, you can come into our office and talk with one of our staff members, tell them exactly what you're looking for. Maybe you don't know what you're looking for, they can help you figure that out too, and they can give you the information and resources that are available. Okay, and do we have anybody here who's caring for someone who has dementia? Alzheimer's disease, Lewy body dementia? No? Okay. Well, maybe just for the video, I should just run through these real quick. But just a couple tips if you are caring for someone who has dementia. It's really helpful as a caregiver if you know about the disease that's causing their dementia-related symptoms, whether it's Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia. Each one's a little bit different, but having an understanding of what's happening in the brain and can help you understand some of those behaviors that you're seeing and can help change your approach to how you would interact with that person when you are caring for them. So that education piece and learning about their disease can be incredibly helpful. It's also important to know that there are a lot of programs and groups available specifically for those people who have memory loss, whether it's a support group. There are memory cafes offered throughout the county, which is a social opportunity for someone with memory loss and their caregiver, and there are classes available as well. And then I always like to mention this Alzheimer's Family Caregiver Support Program. It's a state grant program to help offset the cost of caring for someone who has dementia at home. In order to qualify, the person enrolling needs to have an irreversible dementia diagnosis and a household income of $48,000 a year or below. And then they can get connected with grant funding that can help pay for all of those different things we were looking at on the previous page: respite care in the home or outside of the home, adult day services, Meals on Wheels, a whole variety of different services to help keep that person with dementia at home. If anyone's interested in learning more about that program or enrolling someone, contacting the Aging and Disability Resource Center is where you start for that program. So with that said, here's our contact information. Here's our website, adrc-cw.org. If you want to hop online and look at our resource directory, our toll-free number, that'll connect you with our offices. But like I said, we also have an office in Wisconsin Rapids and in Marshfield. So does anyone have questions specifically related to caregiving or resources that might be available in the community? Happy to try and answer those for you. No? Anyone in Marshfield? I don't want you guys to be left out. No questions? Okay, excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. I hope I was at least a little informative for your 100 wellness points. And I think we got done on time despite the technical difficulties. So thank you so much for listening.